Okay, guys, hi. Welcome to the masterclass. This is another session. Topic today is timing the markets. And of course, let's get lovely Amanda to do the housekeeping for us. Amanda, over to you.
Thank you. All right, I'll keep the housekeeping quick this time. I'm sure many of you have been to our masterclasses before. As you know, this is general advice because there are many of you here. We haven't obviously personalized our information to your personal circumstances. If you book in a 15-minute call with Dragan, then of course you can zoom in and zero in.
Tailor it in. Yep.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So just have a read of our disclaimer there, just to be absolutely clear. We have not done an assessment of your personal circumstances. That comes later. Today is general information. So as you know, or as you may not know, depends if you've been here before, each of our masterclasses operates in pairs. So today's masterclass, using the property clock to time the market, pairs up with using time in the market to guarantee growth. So a lot of people ask us about this because they go, why would I buy now? We've just come off a boom, or why would I buy just before a boom, or what, they sort of talk in terms of booms, which is, yes, valid in the sense that we all know when a boom has happened. The media doesn't let us forget. And then, of course, after a boom, the media likes to scare us all into thinking there's going to be a big, huge correction coming. And people then have a fear of buying because they are worried about buying and then prices plummeting, or alternatively, they want to wait until prices plummet before they purchase. So today's masterclass is about timing the market with these fluctuations, because we do get asked a lot about that.
Yeah. And guys, if you have any questions, feel free to book yourself in a 15-minute discovery call with myself. Here's the QR code right here. Scan that, book yourself in. Of course, this discussion will be personalized to your circumstance. Also, please go to propertysessions.com.au/ if the QR code for some reason is not working, and happy to answer any questions you may have. Myself, I'll keep this quick. I've done this many times on the other masterclass videos. So migrant parents from former Yugoslavia, moved over to Australia in the 70s. I was born the only child, or raised as the only child. I was the child that was, I grew up in commission housing in my early stage in life. Parents struggling with money. I had great parents, but, of course, their English wasn't up to scratch. So they were, at a particular job that weren't creating too much money. And that's, I would guess it have, affected me growing up, because all my friends around me at school had the great shoes and the clothing and the gadgets and the bikes and the skateboards, where I was kind of left out. So I guess that sort of sparked something in me to have this want when I got older. So fast forward, in my early 20s, I started my own photography business. I gathered a lot of knowledge within property investing. I had one of my neighbors where my studio was, who I was renting from. He was a big time property investor. And I gathered a lot of information from him, read a lot of books, did seminars, got into property investing in my early 20s, and never looked back since. So right now, 20 something years later, in a decent position, I guess. And, the good thing about it is I'm teaching my kids at a very early age on what to do and not to do, if that makes sense. Over to you, Amanda.
Sure does. Okay, so my background comes not as much from need as Dragon's. My parents were the children of migrants, so for them it was a need. For us, it was more a consolidation of their efforts. So we were raised with very financially literate parents, or parents that became financially literate, and then they wanted to make sure that us kids were financially literate as well. Growing up, I have very fond memories of, showing my age here, watching Paul Clitheroe's show Money every week as a family. We used to watch Money, Getaway. What were the shows around? But I don't know, whatever they were. But Money was a big one, and Mum and Dad would always discuss the topics with us afterwards. From a very young age, they were very open with us. We were taught very early on, work hard, save hard, play a little bit, but don't play too hard. always think of your future, always invest bricks and mortar over stocks. It's what they understood. They still don't understand the share market. They're very much still property, property, property. And that was indoctrinated into me from a very young age, and I developed a passion for it. Career-wise, I actually went into teaching. I became an English teacher because, again, my parents were like, property operates on the side of your life. It's not your whole life. So you still pursue a job that you love, and property is something that you do in the background. But then, of course, it became a much bigger passion. So now it's a career. Same as Dragan, it's about teaching the kids as well. I've got 3 of my own. My daughter's almost 7, and if you ask her what she wants to do when she's older, she'll go, "I'm gonna buy a house when I turn 18." Because it's been drummed into her as well.
Yeah.
As much as I fought my parents, I'm doing the same to my kids. And it's not about handouts. There were no handouts for us, and there'll be no handouts for them. It's about building knowledge and confidence to actually take the plunge. And I know and can openly admit that I wouldn't have been brave enough on my own at 21 to take the plunge without that push from a parent. It might have taken me till 31 or 41 because I would have had other priorities, other distractions, and I wouldn't have engaged so heavily on the topic if I hadn't been, can I say, brainwashed?
Yeah.
From 2 months old. Because by the time I got to the age where I could do it, I was so desensitized to the fear of it, it just became something that you do. You finish uni, you get a job. You finish high school, you get a job. It's just the next natural progression, and that's all that I was taught. You finish uni, you get a job, you buy a house, you get married, you have kids. Like, that's not negotiable. Turns out it is negotiable. I just figured that out too late. But that's when it's indoctrinated into you to that degree, you don't think twice, you just do it.
Yeah.
So the head start for me was not a handout head start, it was a mindset head start. And a lot of this is mindset. It's feeling ready to do it. So that's what I'm, doing with my kids, hopefully, getting them to a point where they're ready. So they're in charge of their savings. I'll manage their heads, hopefully get them on track. Okay, so let's start with the property clock.
Yeah.
Just like any other clock, the property clock cycles around in a fairly predictable fashion, though not always. So we're going to use the property clock just as a guide so that you can see how when people talk about timing the market, this is what they mean, market fluctuations. What's the general progression of those fluctuations? So we start at the peak, which is 12 o'clock. That's the boom market. Prices are at their highest. The market's peaked. FOMO's peaking. Anyone that hasn't purchased is feeling that little bit of anxiety, like, I didn't get on, prices have run away from me, my savings can't keep up. This is where, people that did get on in time go, sweet, how good is this? I've got some mad equity here. Versus the people that missed out going, oh my God, they get the FOMO and they start overpaying because they want to jump on.
Yep.
So peak prices, boom. So when the boom cools off, the fear of missing out is replaced with a fear of overpaying. So buyers hesitate. They realize that the market's overcooked. They don't want to overpay. So they pull back. And we have what's called the start of the decline. So that's 1, 2 o'clock into 3 o'clock, declining market. So prices pull back. What tends to happen is properties sit on the market longer than usual because vendors still want their top dollar. They've just missed the peak, but they're still chasing that top dollar. You have a bigger gap to the buyers who are scared to pay it. So you've got this gap between what vendors expect for their property and what a buyer is prepared to pay. So the market declines because the longer a property is on the market, the more fatigued the vendor gets, the more purchasing power the buyer has, or more bargaining power the buyer has. So you start to get this decline, nearing the bottom, down to the bottom of the market. So that's where we find a floor. Basically, the floor or the bottom is the lowest price a vendor will take for their property before they decide to just hold on to it. Okay, so how much of a loss on paper are they willing to take from the peak to the bottom before going, you know what, I don't need to sell, I'll wait it out. Okay, so there's your floor. Once we find the floor, that equilibrium, once we find the floor, then and only then does the market start to recover. So from 6 till 9 is your recovery, and then from there, it picks up momentum because once people see that recovery, all those vendors that were waiting it out go, okay, I can sell now. Prices are coming back up. Buyers start to get a little bit anxious. Oh, the market's moving. My savings aren't going to keep up. I better buy. So buyers start to, and then that momentum zooms us around back up to the peak to another boom. Now, the property clock doesn't move in an equal fashion. So from peak to bottom, it might be 3, 4, 5 years, but from bottom back to peak, it might be 10 years. It might be 2 years. It's not predictable, the pacing. The only thing that is predictable is the sequencing, not the pacing. It doesn't move equally. It moves in that order, but not at equal pace all the way around.
Mhm.
So what some people do is that they'll use those predictable cycles to strategize their property gameplay. There are risks involved, which we'll go into later. So stick around for the risks. Don't just get enchanted by the strategy. We'll do the strategy first, but it's not foolproof because you're relying on a living thing. You know, the market cycles, it's a living thing influenced by living people. So it can shift, but generally this is the strategy. So the peak of the market, the top of the boom, that's when you refinance everything. So if you've got a house you live in and 2 or 3 investment properties, when they're at their maximum value, that's when you want to refinance them all. Okay. And the reason you want to refinance them all is because that's when your lender is most likely to value them at the highest amount for the next few years, because we know after that peak is that little dipper down to the bottom. So you've got a few years where your lending capacity is going to drop based on your property values. So when they're right at the top, that's when you want to refinance everything. Not to purchase, you just want to take out the cash and put it in your offset accounts. We're not lending to purchase because we don't want to buy at the top. Okay, it's very risky buying at the top, but we want to liquidate our equity. We want to find what cash we've got access to and store it away in offset because we don't want to go back to our lenders in a falling market. We want to maximize lending at the top. The reason we do that is at the top of a market, lending can tighten. So once the market gets overheated, lending tightens because the same access to finance diminishes as that market gets too hot. Lending tightens because it gets risky for lenders to lend against these overinflated valuations. In addition, when the market's hot, generally the economy is hot, we have rising interest rates. So when interest rates start to go up, again, lending tightens. What they assess you at is higher. The rate that they assess you at is higher. It's harder to get access to finance at a higher rate. You want to refinance before rates start to creep up at that boom point. You want to fill up your offset accounts, especially if you've got a principal place of residence, because your mortgage on that is not tax deductible. So what you can do is take money out of your investment properties, put that money in your offset account against your PPOR, and then you've got the tax benefit of more of your repayments being tax deductible because you've refinanced your investments. You want to be cash ready for the dipper. Okay, now that's not saying you want to buy at the very bottom. You want to wait for that kick back into recovery. But just in case the deal of a lifetime were to present itself, you're cashed up, ready to go.
Ready, that's right. And it does happen, believe me. I've
100%.
had many experience of purchasing properties. That perfect example that, you know, is a value of $800,000 and we've picked it up for $650 because the person has, and a lot of people I know, they always ask me, oh, so why would someone sell at that cheap?
Yes.
Many reasons. One typical reason is someone has just put down a deposit on a property. They've lived in a house, say, that they're selling for, 20, 30 years. They've purchased for $200,000. Now the value is, 1.3, 1.4 million. They will lose the deposit on the next house that they've purchased. They really want the house. It's their owner occupier. And they're happy to, it comes down to negotiation and understanding what, why they're selling. Coming in and, making a particular offer. Hey, I've only got a client that can afford a certain amount, 650,000. Sometimes they say yes. Now I know a lot of people are going to out there say, oh, well, that's, scamming people that want to sell. Well, no, that we've just had that buyer that's ready to pay 650. We work on behalf of the buyer, not the seller. If we can negotiate at a lower price, as low as possible, and they're happy to accept it. So
yeah, and they're represented by their selling agent, and their selling agent is there to act in their interest. So if you're paying our commission, we represent you. They're paying their commission to their agent to represent them.
Yeah.
So it's not your responsibility to compensate for the instructions that a vendor gives their agent. They're in consultation with their agent, and the agent is there to advise them, not you or us.
Yeah,
we act for you.
Our job, or my job, or our job, is to get our client's property as low as possible in the best conditions as possible.
That's right. Now, the other reason we refinance at the peak of the market is to limit overexposure by waiting. So what that means is we're not financing to buy. We've already said that. We don't buy at the top. We just want access to the funds. So we're not actually overexposing ourselves. You're not taking on more debt because you're keeping the cash. So even though on paper your loans just got bigger, you're not spending that cash yet. The cash is sitting in your offset accounts. Now, the reason for that is we know that after a boom, interest rates are going to go up, expenses are going to go up. You've got a cash buffer now as well. So say one of your properties is empty, or, what was cash flow positive becomes cash flow negative with rising interest rates. You've now got a cash buffer sitting in your offset accounts if needed. Whereas if it's in your equity and it hasn't been pulled out, it's not liquid. You can't actually access it even though it's there unless you refinance. And if you're refinancing at a part of the cycle where lending is trickier, you may not have access to your buffer. So make sure you make your buffer available when it's available, which is at the top of the market. I know that's counterintuitive, but it's the way.
But refinancing also takes time, and within that time, you could lose that opportunity when it comes.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You want to have your deposit there, cash buffer. You want the money in your control, not the lender's control. That's the moral of that story, I suppose. So that's what you do at the boom, at the peak. What do you do after the peak when we're heading down that little dipper towards the bottom? This is where you assess your strategy and do a stock take. We don't want to buy yet. It's still too soon to buy, but we've got some cash sitting there. So what we can do is now think about what we're going to do with it. As we reach the top of the rate cycle, you can sort of work out, okay, I can manage my cash flow, or not, I better keep some money in my offset for that. Or you might start assessing your portfolio for performance. So you might look at what properties do I have that need renovating. So while things are quiet, you might use that time to renovate. So whether it's adding value with paint, carpet, or you might go full hog and go kitchen, bathrooms. You might do a structural reno. You might knock out walls, or you might put up walls, add an extra bedroom.
That's right. So you can actually find places, and when you purchase a house, you can see on the floor plan it has 2 living areas, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen a kitchen and a dining. What I find is by just spending a few $1,000s and making that additional living area from a 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom, suddenly you've manufactured some growth in there. And this is just on its own, not doing the kitchens or the bathrooms or doing any paint jobs or carpet. Just that alone, adding additional bedroom will significantly lift the value of that property.
For sure. And this is the time to do it because there's no urgency to buy or sell. Which properties are underperforming? Which properties have untapped potential? So if you've bought something where, it's got granny flat potential, well, you're cashed up now. You're in a position to build that granny flat.
That's right.
You're in a position now to make improvements to your properties. You might do, a knockdown rebuild and put a duplex up. You might, split, do a subdivision where you might split a block in half and put a second dwelling, out the back. You are now in a position where the market isn't giving you any pressure. It's quite flat generally between 12 and 6 with a slight decline, but you're generally in a position where you're cashed up and the market's not creating any urgency for you. During this time, as Dragan said as well, keep an eye out for opportunistic deals. So distressed listings, any properties that are having trouble selling. This is where properties stay on the market for a really long time. So if you notice a property that's, 2.5 months in, and that agent's probably got it on a 3-month exclusive, that agent's going to want to close that deal before his agreement runs out.
Yeah, that's right.
So anything that's been up for, 80 days, go hard. It's like when you buy a car at the end of the month, the last day of the month. It's the same sort of thing with real estate. They're going to want to close that deal. The other thing as well is if they're the second or the third agent on a listing, you've got a fatigued vendor because they've munched their way through multiple agents. So they're no longer chasing top dollar. They're now more willing to meet the market. So if you've noticed, that property's on the market again with a new agent. That property, now they're up to their third agent. Beautiful. You've got a fatigued vendor. Go hard on those ones. So as much as you might be on realestate.com every day, the new listings in a downswinging market, typically aren't going to work for you unless you catch them off market.
Yeah.
So if you catch them off market, they might be a deceased estate, somebody doesn't want to clean them up. The kids might live interstate. They can't, come in to sell. Those ones, grab them off market because they want to be offloaded quickly. Or you go for your fatigued vendors where the property's been overexposed.
Yeah.
Market doesn't want
And
it.
you're going to get people asking, how do you get off market properties? Well, it's spending a lot of time with particular agents, having a relationship with them. Of course, I always say, find your particular suburbs, stick with those, become very friendly with the agents, and then ask the question, hey, have you got any off markets coming your way that will suit what I'm after? And you'd be surprised that, they will start showing you off market properties. Always ask the question, why are they selling? That opens up to you negotiating a better price. If you know they're selling because they're in financial difficulty or they've purchased a house and they really need to sell, also ask them how long have they owned the house. If they've owned the house for 20, 30, 40 years, they will be open to a more of a discount. So if someone has purchased the house for, again, $1 million a year ago and you're asking for 900, well, it's not going to work really.
Psychologically, they want their money back.
They want their money back. But someone that bought it for 200,000, 20 years ago, and now they're selling it for $1 million, there's a good chance they'll accept a $900,000 offer if they need to sell. So ask the question, why?
Yeah, definitely. And know as well that if you're buying off market, the agent's going to want a sure thing, right? Because they don't have the market to fall back on. They can't just run another open home next weekend and find a new buyer.
Yeah.
Their buyer pool is limited when it's off market. So for you as a buyer, that's less competition. But for the agent, it's more risk. So he's more likely to ring a buyer's agent that's got, 10 clients ready to go than some random off the street that they've never dealt with before. So if you are looking for the off-market deals, you kind of need to align yourself with someone that has access to them as well. You can create that access with a lot of labor-intensive man hours, put into building those relationships. That's sort of, where someone like Dragan really proves their value because that legwork is already done and that track record of being a reliable buyer is already done.
But also to add another note to that, they know that I'm a negotiator, right? So they will only give me, even though they don't tell me, they call me or email me with addresses that are off market because they know this property needs to go quick. So that if they wanted a premium price on that particular property, they would not waste their time calling me. So when agents or, even sometimes clients directly, so vendors directly will call me, they know they need to sell it quick because they know I'm working on behalf of my clients. I'm always after a discount. They're going to call me when something needs to be turned quick.
Their priority is speed, not price.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's where the property clock moves into the next bit now, where we get past the bottom into that 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock quadrant. So 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, we're past the bottom. We're starting to recover, but we're not heating up just yet. This is the time to aggressively go shopping. So this is where we say leverage harder than usual. So where we might say in a slower market, stick to 80% mortgages and 80% LVRs because you've got a bit more risk. In a rising market or a recovery market, you might go to 90 or 95% and pay the LMI to get yourself into more properties before that market really heats up.
Yep.
Because you can see it's already starting to cook. The oil is starting, but we're not there yet. So leverage hard and buy more so that you can be better positioned for when that boom hits. The catch, you still have to buy well and you still have to diversify. We're not saying buy anything. We're just saying this is the time to be more aggressive with your leverage and with your negotiating. Whereas in the previous, the 3 to 6 o'clock, you let opportunities come to you or you keep your eyes open. Between 6 and 9, you chase opportunities and you go looking for opportunities.
Yeah.
At the same time, you need to know when to stop buying. So when the market gets a little bit too hot, you want to stop. That usually coincides with the time where everybody else wants to start because they've cottoned on, oh, the market's heating up. But there's always a lag with the media and with Uncle John at the barbecue, okay? if you've been watching the market as a good investor, you should be doing, you've watched that clock do the full cycle. So you've seen the little movement at the station before everybody else has, and you've already done all your buying already. So by the time Uncle John says at the barbecue, oh, I went and saw my broker the other day, oh, he thinks I can pull out this much. I don't sound like John Howard now. But if it's coming up at the family barbecue, too late. That's when you need to stop. When everybody else starts piling on, that's when you know the boom is coming and the FOMO's, maybe a year, 18 months away. So that's when you want to stop buying. And hopefully you've already done all of your buying. Stay ahead of the pack. If the taxi driver brings it up, if it comes up at the family barbecue, oh, we're heading into a boom, your shopping should be finished because you want to have enough growth to not have overpaid.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you've come into a boom, fully loaded. You've done your whole cycle now. So this is you now living through a whole cycle. So we're coming back around to a boom. What do? This is where you might strategically sell down, get rid of some dead weight. So any lemons in your portfolio, get rid of them during a boom because anything will sell during a boom, especially when you've got FOMO driving the market. You won't sell a lemon in a flat market, but you will sell a lemon in a boom. So if you have any lemons, sell them in a boom. Sell anything that has already served its purpose. So if you bought something in a gentrifying area as an equity play and that equity has been realized and that area has now completed its gentrification cycle, it's time to get out because after gentrification, it just plods along like any other suburb. You've done that. It's served its purpose. Get out. If you don't want to sell down, this is where you can, again, like we said before, you start refinancing everything and you start assessing your portfolio, looking for potential, getting ready for the next part of the market. So during a boom, when everybody else is FOMOing in, you're selling out. So you're kind of doing the opposite to what everybody else is doing. You want to sell to the people that are rushing to get in. They might not do their best due diligence. You can flog your lemons. You can sell anything that's already hit the peak of its growth cycle.
Some people will actually pay a much higher price than what it's really worth.
Oh, FOMO is your best friend if you're the one selling. But you need to make sure you don't get FOMO yourself. Now is not the time to buy. You might be watching, everybody else make money. Someone made $100,000 in 6 months. That's awesome. But you've already made that money in your purchasing. So don't you then get the FOMO and go, oh, I've still got time. Don't fool yourself into thinking I've still got time. Because when that market moves, you still got to cover your stamp duty and all the rest of it. You want to buy long before all that chatter, I suppose, starts. Because you're a good investor. You're ahead of the pack. You lead the trend. You're not a follower. Let everyone else do that. You sell into the heat. Don't buy into it. So,
risks.
Yes, we said earlier, don't get enchanted by this strategy. It is very risky. It is, in many senses, a form of gambling because you're managing your timing based on market fluctuations, which are live and unpredictable. So we don't have to look too far back in history to see where this plan can fail. Let's look at Sydney. Well, I suppose this is reflected in the broader market, but we'll focus on Sydney. So 2013 to 2016, we had that rising market and the big boom 2016, 2017. 2017, it started to cool off. And then 2019, we hit the bottom where properties were harder to sell. The listings sort of stayed live a bit longer. 2019, if you bought in 2019, you bought at the bottom. 2020 was when there was supposed to be a nice, slow, gentle, normal recovery that would have taken a couple of years. So 2020 to 2024, we would have had that 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock on the property clock. And then we probably would have been in boom times around now. Okay, if the property had been left to its natural devices, because booms are about 10 years apart, give or take 7 to 10 years apart. So we would have been due for a boom now. However, the boom came 3 years early thanks to COVID. So the property clock was at the bottom at 2019 and then it sped around really quickly to the top. So there was probably an 18-month window instead of a 5-year window. So anyone that was trying to time the market who thought they had more time suddenly didn't because they were waiting. Whereas the people that jumped in 2019, they didn't care if it was the bottom. They just dived in, went for it, and they were the winners. So sometimes trying to be clever can backfire, and you've got to be prepared for that backfire because if you miss that boat, you've missed that boat. So I'm personally an advocate of buy when you can. And if you look at the twin masterclass to this, time in the market as opposed to timing the market, you'll see why I'm such an advocate for that strategy over this strategy.
Yep.
But that's a really good example there of missing the boat because of an external force. So in the case of COVID, the reason for that was the government kept pumping money into the economy by way of stimulus, the JobKeeper and JobSeek, all the rest of it. All that money being pumped into the economy, it swirls around. But what happens is money gets taken out of the economy and added to people's savings. So the amount of money in circulation decreases as people start to hoard it as part of their savings. What do people do with their savings? They buy property. What happens when heaps of people buy property at the same time?
Prices go up.
Prices go up.
Yep.
So it's very easy to see when you see the government injecting money into the economy,
Yes.
it lands in property. So they say money dies in property because that's when it gets taken out of circulation.
Right. Yep.
So when you see money being pumped into the economy, forget the property clock, buy before the results of that stimulus are seen.
Yep.
So that's the biggest risk, where the clock speeds up or slows down unexpectedly. So the opposite of that would be you've done all your heavy buying, but then the market is stagnant for another 5 years. So you've got to tread that water for 5 years before the boom, especially if you've purchased on the belief and you've over leveraged on the belief that a boom is imminent. If that boom is not imminent and you've over leveraged, you will have cash flow issues until that boom hits. And it will hit eventually, but the time that you anticipated managing those holding costs might blow out. So it's a very risky strategy. A lot of investors use it successfully because they might have done it enough times or have a good enough gut feeling to read the market. It also requires you to watch the market on a daily basis. It's not a passive process. It's a very active process, as opposed to just buying when you can and trusting that the long-term market movements will always go up. So do we recommend this strategy? Yes and no. It's something to be mindful of when you purchase.
It's not for everyone.
It's not for everyone, and there's a lot of risk and a lot of uncertainty and a lot of, again, labor-intensive, time-consuming due diligence that needs to be done when the market's going to go up in the long term anyway.
Yep, definitely. So guys, thanks for watching. Again, if you want to jump on a 15-minute discovery call, you have the QR code here, or visit propertysessions.com.au/15. It's a free call. Get your questions ready. Happy to answer any questions you may have. If you're unsure of a particular strategy, I'm here to help. Give us a call. And thank you for the time here. Thank you, Amanda. And we'll see you in the next masterclass.
Thank you.